the United States is regulating themselves out of the economic future. So, this has been a pretty hot topic of debate for a long time, really since Bitcoin has been born and since it's been relatively popular around 2013, 2014. People have always looked at it as the global hedge against market collapses and against things like the US dollar's supremacy, against things like hyperinflation, quantitative easing, against debt-based economies, much like the one we exist in now. It is not very well known, but the fact is that through tools like and techniques like fractional reserve banking, the usage of uncollateralized debt, and other methods of credit building, the world in which we exist in today, the financial system, yes, it has achieved a lot of great things, but it comes at the price of the fact that we actually have no idea where this experiment is going to end, because it is an experiment. We had some basic idea of how economics would work based on old models. For example, when we had Bretton Woods, which was obviously the gold standard, which was signed away. I think this was by Nixon in 1972. Then we moved away from the gold standard onto the US dollars, which was we had dollars before, but after that, the dollars were no longer backed by gold reserves. So what it is it's an experiment. We actually have no real data in the past on what happens to these kind of uncollateralized systems of money and whatnot. And so it is an experiment. And so people look at Bitcoin as a hedge against that, which I'm not sure if I'm fully sold on the store of value idea, but certainly I do think it's a good theory at least. And for Bitcoin, it's something that won't be tested until the next recession. But that is a topic for another video. But now that I've given you the backdrop, I'd wanted to make a video that talked a little bit about the United States and specifically their intent, their centralized control over pretty much everything that exists today. And it appears to me that we are getting from the attitude, the cold, hostile attitude that the United States gives to new technologies such as crypto, I get the impression that the United States is almost regulating themselves. That's the title of this video, regulating themselves out of the economic future. So, I mean, if you look at technology, and for example, wartime, usually the army that had the superior technology won that fight. So whether that was gunpowder or horses even, that can be looked at as pretty strong military technology. The side that had that usually won the fight. So we're no longer doing wars these days, but we are having, let's say, economic wars. And these economic wars are fought through economic means. And Bitcoin obviously presents a little bit of a threat to that system. And so the United States, every country has their own take on this and their own reaction to it. Some are more welcoming than others. With the United States, it does certainly feel like it is a rather cold and hostile, let's say, perception or attitude toward it, which is terrible, but that's what this video is for. So I first wanted to talk about the exchanges. So looking at the field today, practically no exchanges exist in the United States that serve U.S. customers. Right now we're living in the time post the Binance Geofence, so that means that Binance is now no longer an exchange that can be traded on if you're a U.S. customer. We have Bitfinex, for example, kicks you out as soon as they see a United States IP. Even if you're not a United States citizen, you actually have to give your own KYC to prove that you're not a United States citizen. Otherwise, they will kick you out of your account. We have BitMEX, obviously one of the largest exchanges in the world for derivatives that does not allow U.S. customers. And then we have some compliant exchanges. So we have exchanges such as Coinbase, but I would venture to say even Coinbase's tenure is questionable, because I do recall a time when Coinbase was listing only things that they were 100% sure were not securities, and that time went away as soon as they listed Ripple. Once they listed Ripple on Coinbase, it is now calling into question, at least in my eyes, the legitimacy of Coinbase's claims that they only trade things that aren't securities. But again, another topic for another video. But we do have Coinbase. Coinbase has several other alts that you can trade on it, but it's not nearly as much as something like Binance. Obviously, Binance is the leader, the market leader in terms of alts trading. If you want to trade any alt that's worth its salt, it's probably on Binance. So, but if you're not able to access Binance and you're a US customer, what do you do? I remember I had a friend recently who wanted to buy some Chainlink. He went to Binance and it was fine. Unfortunately, he had his Chainlink and Binance geofenced right after that, and he had nowhere to go. This was before Coinbase listed Chainlink. And so this is very worrying for a lot of US investors. And so you have to consider it if for the US population who is interested in crypto, who is interested in the crypto ecosystem, who is interested in altcoins, how are you able to purchase these altcoins if there's no compliance exchanges that are able to list them or willing to list them? This is mainly due to the crypto regulation. Now, if there's less altcoin exposure, then you as a developer, let's say, or a blockchain developer in the United States, have much less incentive to build because you are now already, you're not priced out, but you're geofenced out of being able to market towards the 300 million Americans who exist in America. They can no longer buy your alt unless you either get some super prestigious listing on something like Coinbase, or you operate on something akin to a DEX. But even that is, again, questionable because you'll stick out like a sore thumb if you're the only coin that you're able to buy on something like a DEX and US customers are buying your coin. You're going to get some serious regulatory heat coming after you. On top of that, so that's the first layer that we're already seeing. The United States is almost getting segmented off and isolated into their own island of 300 million Americans, again, who cannot access most of the alt market. And it is a rather tragic story. And the second layer of this is a little piece of news that we've had this week, which was the congressional hearing. I don't know when this video is going to release. I think this video is releasing next week, so this will be last week that we have the congressional hearing. And there were some interesting things that happened in this hearing. Bitcoin was called unstoppable. It was called, funnily enough, you actually, if you haven't seen that hearing, I do recommend watching it. There's a point where the lady is at this gentleman asks, what's the difference between a Bitcoin and a shitcoin, which is hilarious because, well, it just shows how far along we've come, really, that they're asking that in congressional hearings. But even then, they're having this congressional hearing. They're calling Bitcoin unstoppable on one side, and then on the other side, they're doing all of this regulatory movements against people who are looking to get into the crypto market. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because as far as I'm concerned, yes, Bitcoin, sure, it stands on its island. It's on its own. It's one thing that's great. But Bitcoin also represents something like the crypto market. The crypto market is not nearly as robust if the only thing you can buy is Bitcoin and nothing else. There are a lot of other alts like Ethereum, etc. Yes, Ethereum is available on Coinbase, but there's many other alts that aren't available on Coinbase that allow other functionality, so on and so forth, that you simply can't access if the United States doesn't want you to, and they don't. We've also had things like Trump coming out against Bitcoin. He was basically, I've mentioned this a little bit in my Market Watch video, but this was Trump basically in a tweet, and he was mentioning that Bitcoin is backed by nothing, much like the US dollar, but we won't go there. Bitcoin is backed by nothing, it has no value, and he's much more interested in strengthening the US dollar, which is a fair enough point. He is the president of the United States. He does have to say that, technically. One of my viewers actually told me that he came to me after I uploaded one of the videos that mentioned this, and he said, well, yeah, what else do you want Trump to say? He has to strengthen the dollar. He can't go and weaken the dollar and say everybody go buy Bitcoin. And I think that is certainly true to some extent. And yes, Trump is interested in the economy, and he needs to do it. But we also have to keep in mind that a big part of elections and a big part of politics is garnering votes. Now, Trump obviously has his constituency, and this is a little tiny political tangent, but Trump has his constituency, obviously, and they are obviously very interested in nationalism and keeping the strength of the dollar. All right, sure. But you also have to think about it from a voter perspective. If you want to garner the most votes, there's a hell of a lot of people who are in that 18 to 25 to 30-year-old range who know about Bitcoin, who are obsessed about Bitcoin, who love Bitcoin. I would say probably more people than you think. And so if Trump, he doesn't necessarily need to give Bitcoin complete leeway and say it's going to replace the US dollar or something. But certainly if he gave it a little bit more of an open and less hostile attitude, I think he personally would garner a lot more votes. So that's just a small little side point there. But certainly it does make sense why Trump would be more interested in strengthening the dollar. But so now we have the second layer here. We have the government officials. So the first layer we had obviously the regulations. Second layer we have government officials saying these things about crypto and being very hostile. And on the third layer, we look competitively now. So we're looking at Asia. So compared to Asia, also Europe, it's a lot more competitive there. It's a lot more decentralized. There's not just one body in charge of everything. There's a lot of different countries, and they're all kind of competing. Switzerland, for example, has something like Silicon Valley, but for crypto. I think it's called the Crypto Valley. I think it's in Zug. I don't know if it's pronounced Zug, but it's in Switzerland. And we have some of these countries that are truly welcoming crypto with open arms. So I don't personally see any issue with being able to welcome crypto with open arms, while also being able to support your nation's currency or whatever it is that you want to, whatever it is it's on your agenda. Obviously, it's working in these other countries. I don't really see why it wouldn't work in America. And really, I just, the way that I see this is, I just get the impression that the United States is geofencing themselves off almost. It's not so much Binance geofencing away. It's the U.S. geofencing themselves due to all of this regulation and all of this stifling of innovation and all of these people who exist in America. So most of the technology that we use today is American technology, made in America, made in Silicon Valley and California and these places. And so you have to consider, what would the world look like right now if we had many more crypto projects working and building in America and being built on in America? We simply don't know. And the reason we don't know is because there's all of this regulation around it. So if you are a world-class team, maybe you have a world-class idea, but you simply cannot execute on it because of the United States regulatory concern and attitude toward it. So this was kind of sparked a little bit by the congressional hearing, but I will go on a side tangent here. If you guys have not seen the Neuralink stream, I definitely recommend watching that one. That is Elon Musk's Neuralink. And it has me considering, this is not really crypto related, but it also has me considering whether the FDA will actually approve this kind of thing. And so I get the impression that the United States is truly geofencing themselves off from the future with these things. And I also get the idea that if the United States doesn't like crypto, they sure as hell aren't going to like Neuralink, and they're probably not going to approve that either. So just a small aside there. Anyway, that was all I had to say for this video. Please leave a like if you liked the video. Give me a comment. I want to know your thoughts, and I will be back with some more stuff very soon. Bye-bye.